So we move on to the first session, which is on new paradigms, and there are three interesting new paradigms that we're going to be discussing today. The first is this report that I had sent out to you a couple of days ago, and we put it up on our site yesterday. I do hope all of you have had an opportunity to go through that, to browse through the contents. Is that understanding reasonable? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to just go through some of the key findings from this report, which I think is something that we all need to do a lot more. If we believe in the direction of this report, there is a lot more that we can all do collectively to take this report forward to the constituents and the stakeholders who we think should see this report, but more of that in the panel. Let me just take you through some of the key aspects or highlights of this report. For most of you who were there in last year's conference, we had a session on the value of good advice, and we've really taken off from there. And this report is, in a sense, the first milestone that we have reached from the concept of saying, let's do something about quantifying value of good advice, to actually quantifying, at least in round one, what really is the value of the good advice. This report also marks the first milestone which showcases to every stakeholder. And when I say every stakeholder, I'm talking about investors, obviously, which is your most important stakeholder, but equally media, policymakers, everybody, about why good advice must be encouraged as well as enforced. And I do want to spend a minute on that. This report hopefully suggests why we need a lot more of intermediaries, by whatever name called, MFD, RIA, frankly that doesn't matter, but we need a lot more people talking to investors and delivering good advice. But it's not just about a lot more. Equally, hopefully what this report suggests is why we must raise the bar on quality of good advice so that every investor who receives advice can actually get the benefit of the kind of value add that this report suggests that every intermediary can deliver. So it's not enough to simply say we need more people. We need to encourage advice. We also need to encourage enforcement of advice. That's where we are coming from. This report would not have been possible without our able ally iFast, and I must thank Rajesh. And do I see Rajesh here? Yes, Rajesh. Thank you very much, Rajesh and Renu, for helping us put this together. They did a lot of the number crunching for us. We went to multiple iterations, and Rajesh has stuck his neck out again, and he says, look, don't worry, next time we'll be there for you again. So thank you very much for that. I also must express our gratitude to FII and FIFA, the two large associations of distributors, intermediaries, who've been very, very useful sounding boards for us to make sure that we're broadly on the right track, right? Because this is the first of its kind in India. We had a view on what we wanted to discuss and how we wanted to approach it, but it's heartening for us to see that both these key industry associations have looked at it, have told us that, look, broadly you're in the right direction. Of course, there's a lot more feedback that is coming in, and we want a lot more feedback so that in the next edition we can make it stronger. But it's been very encouraging for us that we have the comfort that what we're trying to say seems to be logical. Right? Now, what does this report really do? Like I said, it's the first report that at least we've seen which quantifies the value that you, the intermediary, adds in the life of an average Indian saver. And we put a number to that, which is 4.95% per annum. Right? So internationally, there are a lot of these reports where there is a number, and that becomes a key discussion point in conversations with investors, with regulators, with media, etc. I'm hoping that all of us can collectively take the findings of this report and have those conversations with all the stakeholders saying, look, here's what we as a body are capable of delivering to an average Indian saver in this country. It's also the first report in India which showcases to a policymaker by putting numbers about exactly the kind of help that you can give in generating up to 80% more returns for the average Indian saver. For those of you who've read the report, one of the central premises that we had is that we have a very, very large body of investors who haven't been exposed to mutual funds and to good advice. And we put out a number there saying that if we look at RBI statistics of where they are investing in the financial space, and we look at fixed deposits and other deposits, and that within financial space, that 10% that goes into equity, debentures, units, et cetera, if you look at that number and you apply a 20% tax, so we are saying that let's assume that our target investor earns 5 lakh rupees or more of taxable income, which means he or she is in a 20% tax bracket. Then from a 6% post-tax return, if there is a mutual fund intermediary who does his or her job the way we think this report suggests you should, you're capable of taking this saver from a 6% per annum to 11% per annum for somebody who's at a 20% tax bracket and who opts for a moderate portfolio of 40% equity, 60% debt, which is not a, so we're not talking about moving somebody from FDs to equity and saying, guess what, I added a lot of value, right? So even there, a 6% to 11%, now that's the key number that first, I think all of us should internalize that the mission that we carry in our professions is find more people who are at 6%, take them to 11%, right? Now, and that's the message, if we are truly doing that, then that's the message that we think policymakers should really understand, that here is a set of professionals who are delivering this value today to lakhs of Indian savers, tomorrow, if encouraged, to crores of Indian savers, right? It's also the first report that enables you to have a very clear and precise answer to why your clients should think again before switching to direct. And that answer is 1% versus 4.67. I'll come to that in a subsequent slide, but those of you who've gone through the report, hopefully you've seen how we came to that. And very honestly, it is also a report that perhaps shows a mirror to every mutual fund intermediary in this country and says, look, am I doing enough? If this is what I'm capable of delivering for my investors, am I really doing all that this report says I should and I can to actually deliver that value, right? So to the extent that we find some gaps in our own propositions by reading this report and we strengthen those propositions, this report has done a good job. Now there is a disclaimer, and I must say that one of the first things that Dhruv mentioned, Gurpreet mentioned, Neeraj Bhai mentioned is, hang on, you're saying advisor. So there is this whole debate on advisor versus distributor, etc. So I'm putting out a disclaimer right here. I put the disclaimer in the report. I'm putting the disclaimer here. An advisor, as far as this report is concerned, as of today, means an ARN holder who is offering advice that is incidental to distribution, which, as I stand today, is still a legitimate business. I don't know what will happen later. And an RIA for whom mutual funds are the largest proportion of assets that are advised on. Obviously, as the RIA regulations evolve, perhaps the title of this report will evolve. Perhaps we'll call it the Value of Good Advice report. Perhaps we'll call it the MF Intermediation Alpha report, whatever. The name can change, but my submission is the thrust of this report should not change, because whether you call yourself MFD, RIA, whatever, the key proposition that we want is there are crores of Indian savers who are not getting good advice. All of us here and the rest of us outside have a role to play in enabling that to happen.